Hi, this is Cale Clarke from Relevant Radio. I'm just about to sit down with Tammy and Jordan Peterson at Holy Rosary Church in Toronto. The Easter Vigil has just concluded, and Tammy has been received into the Catholic Church. Let's talk to them about both of their spiritual journeys. I'm here with Tammy and Jordan Peterson. The Easter Vigil has just concluded, and Tammy, you're absolutely glowing, like you're incandescent spiritually. What was the night like for you?
Well, it was a beautiful service, and I thought Father Peter, he put together many people from the congregation to come up and speak, which I think was very generous, and also kept, the momentum going, because you go through all the stories. You really tell the whole story of the Bible through the 7 people who come up, and it started out in the dark. Last year we did that at a monastery in Austria.
In Austria?
Yeah, Jordan and I were staying in a monastery. We look out, hey, they're lighting a fire down there. I wonder what that's all about. No, I think we were told what it was about.
I think we were.
Yeah, we were told what it was about. But it was new to us. We'd never been to the Easter Vigil before, and it was gorgeous. It was a big fire, and they sang, and then we all lit candles and went in.
Monastery?
5 weeks.
5 weeks.
Jordan said, how long were we there? 10 days? I said, no, we were there for 5 weeks. 5 weeks.
It was that good.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's 800 years old. Staggeringly beautiful.
Right.
Heiligenkreuz, it's called. Yeah, a very conservative Catholic monastery.
And speaking of what Tammy was saying, just for you, listening to all the readings, kind of experiencing salvation history, as one scholar says, the Mass is where written text becomes living word. Just hearing all those who wrestled with God through the centuries, all those readings, how did that impact you, Jordan?
You mean tonight or
Tonight.
in general? Tonight. Well, as far as I was concerned tonight, this was a night for Tammy. She's put a lot of work into this, a lot of preparation. It's not a trivial decision. It's not a whim of any sort. It's the culmination of years of effort, particularly focused effort in this regard in the last 5 years, and it's been really good for her. So far, the whole process has opened up a number of adventures for her. She's certainly, right from the beginning, when she started to use the rosary, that was very helpful to her when she was very ill, and then she made a very good friend, and, it's been a sequence of expanding opportunities for her. And there's a lot of public interest in what she's doing, which is
interesting
and unexpected in many, many ways, but also extremely positive, and it's been very good for her, and she's seeing what's there, trying to shape it, and this is part of that, and great, as far as I'm concerned.
And you're right, Jordan, so many people are interested, millions of people interested in your story, having been given 10 months to live, the power of the rosary. We spoke about that last time you were with us on Relevant Radio. And now you've come home. You've come home. You were confirmed tonight, having been baptized before in another tradition, but did you take a confirmation name? It's
Mary.
You took Mary.
Yes, I was looking through and reading about different saints, and then I thought, really, what am I doing? Because obviously, this is Mary. When I was a little girl and I first went to the Protestant church, I looked around and thought, where's Mary? So I've been looking for Mary my whole life, and I found her in the Catholic Church. I found her in the Rosary, and that made perfect sense, of course, and then having it have been my great-grandmother's Rosary, that there was Catholicism in my background. Oh yeah, okay, that made sense. And my friend Queenie, she stuck with me for 5 weeks in the hospital, prayed with me every day for 5 weeks. She was just saying tonight, so I prayed for 5 weeks with you. When you went to Pennsylvania for that last-ditch attempt to save your life, you prayed Opus Dei, Novena for the sick for
San
5
Josemaria.
days. For 5 days, and then you got better. And now it's been 5 years, and you're entering the Catholic Church. She said, God's a poet.
And you started
was a
doing
good
your
point.
podcast after your experience with the Rosary and your...
Yeah. Well, we were going back on tour, and I thought I had been asking during the first tour what I was doing that was meaningful. I was just asking.
So we were talking about her podcast tonight. Behind the altar, the stained glass.
When it was dark, you could see all the stained glass. It was
you can
beautiful.
see the Virgin Mary with the infant Jesus on her on her knee, on her lap, and then underneath that, the crucifix. And so it's very interesting symbolic portrayal, because Mary has to turn herself over to God, knowing that the destiny of her child is tragic, right? But that's the story of mothers. Is that mothers, to become a mother voluntarily means to turn yourself over to the will of God in a major way, because so much of what happens to you when you're a mother is beyond you. It's beyond you in every way. And then what happens to your child is beyond you too. And you have to give up your child to the world, right? And that's, of course, what Mary does in spades. And that is the sacrifice of the mother. And so that image of Mary and the image of the crucifix, they make sense joined together in that way.
And one thing that you've said, Tammy, in the past is that when you were asked, why the Catholic Church? And you had said, to me, it's very similar to Noah's Ark. And we almost have to batten down the hatches because the storm's coming.
Right.
And we see this happening now in the West, don't we?
Yeah, we do. And we see people that we've been speaking to, intellectuals that we've been speaking to, who are now turning to the church.
People who have their eyes open understand that things are disturbed at a religious level. It's not merely political. The disturbance in our culture is extremely deep. It's fundamental. And people who are awake are seeing that more and more clearly. And that includes many people who've been on the atheistic or agnostic side. Ayaan Hirsi Ali is a good example. Neil Ferguson, her husband, Douglas Murray, Joe Rogan for that matter, Russell Brand. These are surprising figures. This isn't what you'd expect. But the reason is they can see that the culture war goes all the way to the bottom, and it does. It's very, very deep division. It's not merely political. The political is just a manifestation of something that's much, much disturbed, much deeper. And the environmental movement, the same thing. I mean, I've been looking recently at the story of Elijah, who, of course, is the prophet who faces down the prophets of the God of nature.
Right.
That's Baal. Well, most of the intellectual West worships Baal. Right? It's nature worship, and it's making nature primary. And as Tammy said, when your orientation upward fails, societally and psychologically, something else rises to fill that gap. Or you're fractured. You can be fractured too. But nature worship is a dreadful malaise, and it's very attractive because nature is a very powerful force. It's easy to deify it, and it's easy to think you're moral when you're doing it.
Absolutely.
And then we end up sacrificing cows to change the weather.
Or babies to change the weather.
Yeah, well, that's right.
Yeah.
There's no question that the human person is a worshiping creature. And if we don't worship the true and living God, we will worship something or someone else. It's ingrained in us.
Yeah.
What makes one not reach for God and reach into
there's lots of reasons.
Instead?
Well, whim is a good one. The demand for immediate gratification that's sufficient. And it's easily rationalized. Why the hell shouldn't I get exactly what I want right now, regardless of the cost to anyone else?
Or even if your self-will, which might be you might be looking to other people to help other people, but you're still taking your guidance from what you think is the right idea. And that won't, it just won't bring you the response that you might have had.
Yeah, absolutely.
Power, people want power. And none of that needs any explanation. It's like, why do people worship their hedonistic whims? Well, because they can get what they want right now, like a toddler. Why do they worship power? Well, because if you have power, you can force people to do your bidding. Actually, you force them to do the bidding of what's worst within you. And that's the rub. It's like, what do you want? It's like, what makes you think you are in control of that exactly?
That's what makes the crucifixion so interesting, because the one who had the ultimate power really laid it down and sacrificed himself. And I know that one thing that you did when you got married was that you promised each other that you would always tell the truth, and you'd always search for the truth. And now obviously you feel that you found the truth, and not just a set of propositions, a syllogism or something. It's a person who says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And as you've watched her, Jordan, on this journey, does that create can you see yourself on this journey? Can you see yourself
Well, Jordan.
Well, she's I married to her, so whatever happens to her happens to me. It's not like it's separable.
Yeah.
I think you described her developing faith as the understanding of a relationship. I mean, what Tammy's told me is that she came to understand in the last few years the distinction between following what she believed to be right and looking for what's right. Those aren't the same thing. And that's a very subtle distinction. And I've watched her learn to make that distinction more and more accurately. I think she always did that in relationship to her children. And so, that's a big deal, because Tammy always put what was good for her children before herself, her narrow self. And she found that to be a relief. She said when she first had kids that the fact that when we went to visit our relatives, for example, that their focus was now on her children was actually, you could imagine that could be an insult to narcissism, but she found it a relief. And I think what's happened to her more recently is an expansion of that relief. Like the fact that, her mantra for a while has been, it's an easy thing to be cliched, but it's not cliched because she's doing it seriously, which is to search for the next right thing to do, which is to feel out the circumstances, to see where you should, this is what happens when Moses crosses the Red Sea, to feel out where the solid ground is. And I watch what that's done for her, in my estimation, is it's lifted her out of possession by anything really other than the wish to aim up. I mean, I know you have to fight for that all the time, but so does everyone.
Well, I have to pray in the morning and orient myself properly every morning, because things will be calling to me that shouldn't be calling to me. Yeah. And so then I have to overcome that, clear my mind, and then start the day.
You're much more grateful, like habitually, and that's been a practice.
My illness, that was gratitude, came out of that largely, but then the practice of gratitude has been come back to just my daily normal life, and that is a necessity to look for gratitude in every situation, to look for gratitude, to overcome anger and
resentment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gratitude is the opposite of resentment, and it's a good practice. There's everything to be resentful about, always.
Yeah.
But, well,
it doesn't bring the next right thing.
That's a good pathway to hell.
No, it doesn't bring the next right thing.
No, that's for sure.
I want to pick up on that theme of the next right thing, and it kind of reminds me of a movie that my daughter Michaela likes to watch again and again and again, Frozen 2, and that's one of the big songs, The Next Right Thing.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, consider yourself spared from that. But having said that, with confirmation, and of course being confirmed now as a Catholic, and I always look at that word confirmation, right in the middle of that word is another word, firm. It's firming up your faith and really setting you on the loose for your specific mission in life that the Lord has given you in his vineyard. And so as you're looking to the future, what do you think the next right thing is for you to do? What do you think God's calling you to do now that you're in the church?
Well, that's interesting, because I started a podcast, and that was when I started praying the rosary. So that's come since I had changed my focus largely. And I've gone on tour with Jordan, and an active part by opening the shows and by doing the Q&A with that, and also telling stories on stage, which I'd never done before. So that's also very new.
The proverb work you're doing?
Oh, yeah, I just started the proverb. So now what I'm doing is I'm reading a proverb, recording a proverb, and then I'm asking the meanings of the proverbs and writing all of that down, and then putting in some key phrases, and then speaking to the camera about what I think it means. And that's been an interesting project. That's
You're
just
working
getting
with some
going.
musicians on that too?
Yeah, I have a musician and a producer who I'm working, my podcast producer, and a musician who Jordan and I produced a bunch of music when he was sick. He was too sick to do anything. So I said, why don't you take some of these old poems that you'd written and let's illustrate them, I think is what I suggested. It began to be illustrated, and then it turned into music, and we recorded 9 songs. So we have an album, really.
You got an album? Wow.
Yeah, but we haven't put the album out yet.
Taking the music world by storm. But I really love this this concept of doing Proverbs, because of course in Proverbs 31, that woman of great character is kind of seals off the end of that book. And when you read that, does that kind of fill you with excitement for the future? What
the Proverbs?
Yeah, and what?
Yeah. I mean, the Proverbs they speak to me, but I have, and I don't know if this is true, but isn't the Psalms? It's for people who are they're trying to understand their faith, trying to get with their faith. Whereas the Proverbs, this is guidance through your faith and with your faith, and to become more, and to find your path forward. And I'm very interested in that. So we'll see what I find.
I want you to this concept of death and resurrection and new life. It really probably hit home for you very hard in December, because you lost your dad, Del.
Yes.
On the same day your fourth grandson was born.
Yeah. That was quite a day. Yeah. And that baby came a month early. So that baby wasn't supposed to come that day.
Oh, really?
No. So when I called her to say that my dad was starting to go into his dying time, she said, Mom, I think I'm showing. And I thought, oh, well, that's a surprise, because so I think my dad left on the day that baby came. And
wow.
I'm very grateful to him, because I learned a lot about grief over that next week. And it was complicated, because...
Was it temptation to resentment?
Yeah, it definitely was, because Jordan had to go back up and see his parents 3 days after my dad died. So he left me, but I had to go to the States. We'd already invited a friend down there who was there, and my daughter just had a baby. I thought, well, I should go back. So I went back, but of course my daughter was in her bedroom with this new premature baby. She and her husband were just there, and they weren't. The door was locked. They were in there, and so I was alone, and I was praying and walking, but when I talked to Father Peter, I was truthful to him, and I said, I think I've been resentful this week. And he said, did you take that to prayer? And and I had tried to take it to prayer, but there's something about sharing your sin with someone in good faith, right? Mm-hmm. Where God is going to be there, that made it obvious that I hadn't taken it to God. And at that moment, it seemed the exactly right next thing to do. And when I did it that evening, I felt completely different.
What did you do?
Well, any kind of emotions that I had been harboring were gone. I felt filled with love for my father, and I received his obituary in my email, and all I wanted to do was share it with everybody who might have known him. And I began to share it on Messenger, and I was thinking, oh, this is a person I knew. He knew my dad, and she knew my dad, and pretty soon it said spam, because I thought I was one of those, right? And I thought, oh dear. But then I felt compelled to go back in there, and I shared it with, it had to be 20 more people. And then it said spam again, and I thought, oh dear. But then I went back in again, and I think I shared it with between 40 and 60 people. And then I started getting these messages back, and it was like, oh, I remember your dad. He had such a good sense of humor, and he used to golf with my dad. And I started to cry, and I thought, oh, this is grief. This is proper grief. This is gratitude for my dad's life, joy in the celebration of who he was. But God has filled me with enough love that I want to share it with people. And then if they are healthy enough, they share it back with me. And that's how you get back from people, when you share without wanting anything in return.
No, the death and resurrection theme is relevant too, because you were so close to being dead. I mean, one of the things that we've talked about a lot is, well, like both of us feel that we live on borrowed time in some way, because we were both gone, and here we are.
Yeah.
And so
we look at each other in the morning and go, huh, there you are.
There, surprise, surprise.
Here you are.
Here you are.
And so, that's a new lease on life. And so one of the things that an experience like that does is, I mean, I don't think I took things for granted to particular. Well, that's not true. I took lots of things for granted. Things normally people take for granted, like being able to sit. And if you lose all that, then, and and things turn around, well, then you have a new life ahead of you.
And
That's
you know
a kind
that
of
it's
baptism.
a finite time that you have right then too.
Yeah.
It's finite. Whatever you have is finite. So you better just, be grateful for it and take as much joy in it as you can now, because really, people say that in a way that it won't last, but it truly won't last. So get with it.
And I like how you've mentioned once again gratitude and Thanksgiving. It's so key and such an antidote to what's in the culture today. And of course, Eucharist also means Thanksgiving, as we know. And receiving your first Eucharist tonight.
Yeah.
It's beautiful to look over and watch you as you're experiencing the Mass and receiving those sacraments for the first time. And we are thankful that you're in the Catholic Church. We're really excited about what God is doing in both of your lives in the future. And I want to thank you for taking the time on this night of nights to join us here on Relevant Radio. God bless you.
I hope it's helpful. God bless
Thank you, Tammy and Jordan Peterson.
Good
Happy Easter to you.
Happy Easter
Happy
to you.
Easter.
Happy Easter.
Yeah.